Hi everyone, Leah here from EurekaCrystalBeads.com with another fun beading video for you. Before I get started, just a quick reminder to go check out the rest of our channel. And if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button and that notification bell, and you'll always know when we're posting new content. Today's project is a bracelet featuring the ever fun crystal rose Monte, and I'll talk about them a little bit more in just a minute. So I'm calling it the Mardi Gras Crystal Monte bracelet because hopefully the colors I have here remind you of the Mardi Gras Festival of New Orleans. So let me show you exactly what we're going to be using. First, we're going to be using Soft Touch Soft Flex here, and we're going to be using it in the 014 fine diameter. We're going to use some 4mm Swarovski crystal bicones, and we will link you below to all of these products as well, so that way if you love my colors or you just love the design and you want to explore other colors, you can easily find them on our website. Of course, we have our rose Montees. Now, if you've never worked with rose Montees before, it's a crystal that's set into a metal setting. There's prongs on the front, keeping it in. And on the back, you have a crisscross, or in the shape of an X, pathway that you can crisscross through with your beading needles and your fire line, or with your flexible beading wire. In this case, we're using a flexible beading wire, but it allows you to do all sorts of fun, more intricate designs, and you end up with these lovely crystals set into your design that just sit in these beautiful settings, and they have such a lovely sort of higher end look to them. Okay, we also have a Toho size 11 seed bead here in a really beautiful sort of royal purple color. I have some 6mm Swarovski crystal bicones. These ones have that beautiful shimmer finish on them, which if you haven't seen in person is so stunning. And then lastly, let's talk our findings. So I'm going to be using a 2-strand slide bar clasp here. And because of that, I'm going to need 4 crimp beads. These are 2mm crimp beads, and 4 crimp covers. These are 4mm crimp covers. And we do have these on our website in both sterling silver or silver plated, or various other metal finishes as well. Gold, antique brass, all sorts of beautiful metals and finishes. So you can definitely get a lot of options if you decide you want to make this project in a multitude of colors. All right, let's get started. Okay, what I've started by doing is cutting a piece of my Soft Touch Soft Flex here. I did about a wingspan. I want to make sure that I have more than enough to make my bracelet, and then I went ahead and cut that piece in half. So I have 2 pieces that are about half a wingspan long. And you may find that you need a little more or a little less. It all depends on how long you'd like to make your bracelet. So what we're going to start by doing is with each of our strands, we're going to crimp to our clasp here. So I'm just going to pick up my crimp bead, slide it through the loop of my clasp, and then feed it back through my crimp bead here. And then I'm going to gently push it up to the clasp there. I don't like to push it up too tight. I like this to be able to wiggle just a little bit. Otherwise, the clasp can sit a little stiffly on your bracelet, so you don't have to push it up too far. Now we're going to go to our crimper tool here. If you've never used a crimper tool before, we do have other videos on our YouTube channel that show each of the steps of a crimper tool much more in-depthly. So I'm going to go a little bit faster here. Simply going to put it in that back chamber. I'm going to give it a good squish. Put it up on its side, and put it in that front chamber to then fold my crimp in half. Just like that. And so you can see if it's done well, you can see that seam running down our crimp bead there, and it's crimped nice and well. Always give it a little bit of a tug to check it too. Now we're going to go ahead and do that on the other side. And you'll notice I didn't trim off my tail yet. That's because I oftentimes like to leave that tail there and feed the first bead or 2 over it. Then I like to trim it off. Or at least I like to trim it so I leave a little bit on, so that way the tail will sit inside of the first bead or 2. And this is nice because it means that you're not going to be trimming your tail right next to your crimp bead. And if your crimp ever started to slip, it's going to pop right out immediately. And having a little bit of a tail there gives you some time to catch it, because in a perfect world, we're all crimping perfectly, but we are human. So in the event that your crimping job wasn't perfect, it gives you some time to catch the bracelet before it comes apart. Well, because you'll see that little beaded, that little wired loop getting a little bit bigger as the tail starts to slip out. So never a bad idea. So that's what we have here. Okay, and we're also going to have crimp covers that are going to cover over this, but I like to put my crimp covers on after I've done some of my beadwork. So I'll show you that in just a minute. So I've trimmed those little tails of wire down just a little bit. And then another important step, just to make your job a little bit easier, is I then went to the very end of my 2 strands of wire here and I trimmed them even. And the reason that I wanted to do that is because working with them evenly is I just find a little bit easier. And also when I crimped, my 2 little tails were slightly different, and that's why these ended up being slightly different in length. But these are all sort of just little details that I find helpful, so you can disregard them or you can give them a shot. It's up to you. So now we're going to start our repeating pattern. And what we do on one side of our wire, we're going to be doing on the other side. And then we're also going to be doing some crisscrossing, and that's what's going to make this pattern a little bit more intricate. So what I like to do is hold my clasp right here in front of me, and then I have a wire in my right and in my left hand. And we're going to start by loading on a 4mm bicone onto each strand. And this is the bead that we're going to fit right over, or feed right over, that little tail of wire that's there. And a 4mm bicone is perfect for that because it slides right over it. You won't have to struggle with that at all. And you want to make sure that you get that fed over there now, because as you start to bead, if you forgot to make sure that it was fed through, it's a bit harder once everything is all tightly woven for you to get that into your crystals. All right, so now we're going to pick up a seed bead on both sides, and we're going to crisscross through a 6mm bicone. So that means that one wire comes in from the right side and pops out the left, and the other wire comes in from the left side and pops out the right. And you're going to want to make sure as you bring this down that you really work neatly with your wires here. And the reason that I say that is because as things start to get a little twisted up, what can happen is your bracelet can start to get these little ridges or wiggles in it. And I find that just keeping everything nice and neat and flat when you can helps your bracelet to lay more flat when it's finished. Okay, just like this. Now we're going to pick up another seed bead on both sides. And another 4mm bicone on both sides. Now, we're going to be working with one of the crystal Montees next. And what I find helpful is I like to work with the Montees with the crystal face down. And the reason is because it's really important that when you crisscross through your Montees, you're always crisscrossing the same way. Otherwise, you might end up with a bracelet that has some Montees facing up and some Montees facing down. And so I find it easiest to work with the Montees where I can see the holes that I'm going through here. So what we're going to do is take one wire, our right wire, and we're going to crisscross through the Monte like this. And then we're going to take the other wire and we're going to crisscross through the other way. Now, this first one that we do sets the precedent for the way our Montees are going to sit, all facing up, all facing down. So after this one, I will continue to add them where I can see that setting on the back, just to make sure they all go on the same way. And that's what we get. So as you can see right now, I let go of it and it tends to loosen up. That's what will happen as you go along. Whatever you most recently did will sort of loosen up a little bit if you let it go. But once you do a little bit of beadwork beyond it, it will stay nice and tight. So we're gonna just hold that down there with our finger. And now we're gonna repeat what we did down here. Let me show you a nice close-up first, actually. That's what we have. From the other side, this is what we have. There we go. Okay, so get that wire in your left hand and that wire in your right hand. Each side is going to get a 4mm bicone and then a seed bead, and then we're going to crisscross through the next 6mm bicone. Now, another trick to keep your bracelet flat is, like, for example, this little tail right here. You want to make sure that it doesn't get sort of twisted around your working wire here. That's another thing that will cause your bracelet to sort of buckle a little bit. So you want to make sure that it's going nice and cleanly through the crystal. And now when we pull this down, that's what's going to keep this now a little bit tighter to the rest of the bracelet. All right, so now we're going to load on the last half of this little sequence here, which is going to be the other seed bead on either side, on both sides, and the 4mm bicone on both sides. And now we're back to Rose Monte. So again, I like working with the Montees face so I can see the back. That helps me know where the hole is, because obviously if I'm looking at it like this, I'm going to be poking around sort of trying to find the hole. So, and it's also a way for me to make sure that my Montees are all facing the same way. I'm going to get that through from that side, get this wire through from this side, just like this. And get it right down. And again, as you can see, if you let it go, it loosens up a bit, but just as you saw before, once we keep going, it'll stay tight. And that's what we have, the beautiful start to this lovely Mardi Gras themed, as far as those wonderful sort of royal purples and green, emerald greens. I think they're just sort of quintessential Mardi Gras colors, but this is the start of our bracelet. And what's nice about the Rose Montees is that they offer a lovely contrast to the bicones. They're of a similar size. The Rose Monte is an SS30, which stands for stone size 30, and that's about the equivalent of close to a 6mm bicone. So you have a similar size there, but you have that lovely contrast of the shape of the bicone and then this flat crystal that's set into that setting where you can see that sort of beautiful metal reflection coming from the back of the Monte. So it's a really nice contrast. So what I'm going to do is keep going with this same repeating pattern, and I'll come back to you in a minute to show you how we finish up. Okay, so I have beaded up my whole bracelet. That's what it looks like from the back, and this is what it looks like from the front. Look at that beautiful sparkle and shimmer you get from those Rose Montees being in those settings. I think they're absolutely lovely. So I have finished up with my pattern, and I'm ending with two crimp beads, one on each side, just as I did in the beginning here. And what's nice about ending with the bicone is that when you crisscross through the bicone, things stay a little tighter than when you crisscross through the Monte. So I don't have to worry about letting this go and having it spring out again. So I'm going to take my wire here. I'm going to trim this down a little bit for the sake of the crimping. And I'm going to feed my wire through its complementary loop on the other side of our clasp here, and then back through the crimp bead and back through the bicone. Because remember, if possible, it's always best to feed that tail of wire back through something. I'm going to pull that nice and tight, making sure that the rest of my bracelet of that line is nice and tight. And then I just like to, like I said before, pull it just away from the clasp a little bit, just so it's not right super tight with the clasp. Give it a crimp. And again, if you're a little fuzzy on crimping technique, check out our basics of stringing video on our channel. And there are some other stringing videos as well, but the basics of stringing video is really good. It goes over this really, really in depth if you're feeling like you're not too confident in your crimping technique. Oop, I lost my last beads there. All right, so I need my seed bead, my bicone, and my crimp. And you can see that because this line has been kind of jostled around a bit, we have some looseness right over here. That's fine, because once we pull this nice and tight, all of that tightens up. So as we go back through our crimp bead and our bicone, everything will be pulled nice and tightly. So go back through your crimp bead there. Go back through your bicone. You want to pull this nice and tightly, and you'll notice that the whole thing starts to tighten right up, which is great. Again, pull that crimp just away from your clasp just a little bit, just so it's not too crazy tight, especially because once you crimp your crimp bead, once you squish it, it tends to tighten it up a little bit more too. Okay, let's get in there, get our crimping done. Okay, now we can go ahead and take our flex wire cutters here. We're going to trim off those tails after those bicones. And now we can go ahead and put our crimp covers on. Now, the crimper tool is actually what I love best for putting on crimp covers, because that little round chamber in the front, one right there, that is perfect for fitting your crimp covers right into it. Just like that. And then you can feed it easily right over your crimp bead. I just find it helps you to get in there a little bit easier than your fingers can get in there. And now we're just going to gently nudge that crimp cover shut. Just like that. So let's get those other crimp covers on there. If you've never used crimp covers before, I think they're a really great way to finish up your jewelry, because it's all about those little details, and covering up your crimp beads I think is a nice detail to add, especially since sometimes, I think we've all been there, the crimp doesn't end up squishing very neatly, but we know it's held really well. It just doesn't look like it's done very neatly, but we know it's not going anywhere. So to cover it up with crimp covers makes that area look nice and neat and clean, because those crimp covers end up looking like beads themselves. And if you've never used one of these slide bar clasps before, they're a lot of fun too. I think they're very easy to put on yourself, and I think they look nice. And I think they're also pretty secure. There are some versions that we have that are also magnetic, so when they start to slide in together, they really catch nicely, and they go right in. Oops, my crimp cover is twisting around in here. There we go. Fit it the rest of the way over. Use my crimper tool to gently nudge it closed. Now, and the crimp covers take very little pressure to squeeze, so it's very easy to over squeeze, so make sure you're not over squeezing. And then this is how that clasp works. If you've never used it before, you just grab both ends and you slide it apart, and one side fits into the other, and they're really nice and secure, and I think they look nice on a bracelet. We carry them with different numbers of loops going across, so this is just a 2-strand. We have them with more loops, so you can do wider bracelets if you like, but this is what we end up with, ladies and gentlemen. So this is the Mardi Gras Crystal Monte bracelet. Really great for a beginner. This is a great gift to give someone, because it definitely has that look to someone who doesn't make jewelry, like, how did you make that? And you know that it was a pretty easy, just sort of crisscrossing technique. And with those Montees there, they add just an extra little element of fanciness, which I think is fun. And we carry these Montees on our website, eurekacrystalbeads.com, in different sizes and different colors, some of them with AB finishes on them, so you can have a lot of fun with them. They come very, very tiny, and they come nice and large like this, which is the equivalent. This is an SS30, like I said, which is around the equivalent of a 6mm, and they get smaller, so you can do even more intricate things with them. And we'll have some other Monte projects coming up as well, because I just think they're a lot of fun, and they add a lovely element to any design. All right, folks, that wraps it up. Thanks for watching. Make sure to visit us on over at eurekacrystalbeads.com for everything I used in this video, and we'll link you below as well. And I will see you next time. Bye.